So I just want to comment, Lee, that little double asterisk, it says video and microphone is currently disabled. That should say are.
What now?
Video and microphone are currently disabled. So the next time we have a big old
Oh,
giant
yeah, I see
virus,
what you mean. Yeah,
we can fix
yeah.
this.
Thank you for that.
You embarrassed me, Howell. I'm an English major. I should have picked that up.
That's pretty
Mike,
basic.
Mike, you did. You, at the last meeting, there was I guess, a little Scribner error. And the word it was singular and it should have been plural. I remember. And so you corrected us. Thank you.
Well, I'm proud of myself now.
Yes.
I don't think my teachers over at Sedville really knew I had that kind of capacity.
All right, we're all set.
So we're all set.
This is the March 1st, 2022 meeting of the City of Charleston Board of Zoning Appeals, Zoning. Present are Mr. Morrison, Mr. Judon, Ms. Richards, Mr. Bennett, and Mr. Robinson. Present from the planning staff are Mr. Batchella, Ms. Ashby, and Mr. Valentine. These proceedings are being recorded. We ask those who speak identify themselves for the record. We'll conduct this meeting in usual fashion. We'll first receive information from city staff about the application and their recommendation. If the recommendation is favorable and no one objects to the application, usually the Board of Zoning Appeals treats the matter as being uncontested and passes it as a matter of course. If, however, the city recommends against the application or there is opposition to the application, we treat the application as contested and hear from the applicant and anyone else who's in favor of the application. Next, we hear from anyone opposed, followed by a short rebuttal from the applicant. We then close the public hearing portion of the meeting for that particular application and open discussion to the Board of Zoning Appeals members only. We'll then make a decision to approve with conditions, or deny the application. The Board of Zoning Appeals, zoning, has the authority to do three things. First, to hear appeals to decisions of the zoning administrator. Second, to grant special exceptions to fact-finding function of the board. And third, to grant variances to the zoning ordinance if the application meets the hardship test outlined in section 54-924 of the ordinance. The board may deliberate and make a final decision on a matter by a majority vote of members present at the hearing and qualified to vote, provided that not less than a quorum is present and qualified to vote. However, an affirmative vote of 2/3 of the board members present and voting shall be required before a use variance may be granted. For a variance to be granted, the Board of Zoning Appeals must make the following findings. A, that there are extraordinary and exceptional circumstances pertaining to the particular piece of property. B, these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. C, because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. And D, the authorization of a variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property or to the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance. We have two items that have been deferred for this evening. The first is item B3 on the agenda, 8 Cleveland Street. The second is item B6, 16 King Street. Neither of these items will be heard tonight. First item on the agenda is item A1, review of the minutes of the February 15th, 2022 board meeting. The board has been sent copies of these minutes. And are there any additions, corrections, or deletions? Hearing none, a motion for approval of the minutes is made by Mr. Morrison, seconded by Mr. Judan. All in favor signify by saying aye. Mr. Morrison,
Aye.
Mr. Judan,
Aye.
Ms. Richards,
Aye.
Mr. Bennett,
Aye.
Mr. Robinson votes aye. Motion is unanimously approved. Second item is on the agenda is item A2, 15 Beedens Alley, Charlestown. Mr. Bennett will recuse from hearing this item. This is a request from section 54-301 to allow construction of single-family residence with 42% lot occupancy, 35% limitation, zone SR5, Mr. Batchelder.
This is a residentially zoned property just south of Elliott Street on Beedens Alley in the Charlestown neighborhood. The property had a home on it for many years, but that home was demolished. It was not historic, and it was demolished a few years ago, I believe. So the lot is a vacant lot, and this is a proposal to build a new single-family residence on this lot. See, here's the map showing the location on Beedens Alley, just south of Elliott Street. This is an aerial view of the area. So you see the lot in question right here. And all of the surrounding lots, as you can see from this image, have homes on them. Here's the zoning map showing that this property has a SR5 zoning district designation, and this shows buildings, and you can see just visually that many of those buildings are close to, if not over 50% of the occupied, more than 50% of the lot. So the request for 42% lot occupancy, which is the variance, is not unusual. The application, this is the material. So this is the site plan. This illustrates the limits of the lot here with this outer line. And then it also shows with these dashed lines, the setback lines that are required. So 3 feet in the north, 3 feet off the rear property line, and 7 feet off the south side property line, with a total of 15 on the side, which they meet. And there is no front setback requirement. So the only issue, and there will be parking over here in this side yard. So the only issue for this single family residence is lot coverage, or lot occupancy, as we call it in the zoning ordinance. And they're requesting a total lot occupancy of the building on the site of 42%. 35% is what's permitted. And you'll see in a later slide that the applicant has considered the lot occupancies of all the properties in the immediate area and listed those with an average, and you'll see what that is later on. But this 42% is not unusual at all within that area. And in fact, it's below the average. And I'm going to go through these slides. I could let the applicant do it, but I'll just do it. They've done a very good job of putting their slides together. And so I'm just going to go through it. And if you have any questions, the applicant, I know, is in the meeting, and we can call on them. This again is a site plan showing the proposed improvements on the lot with the house and the driveway and the yard. Here are floor plans. So first floor, second floor, third floor. The property is in a district that allows the height that they're proposing, so that's not an issue. Roof, the flat roof with a small enclosure that's more of a mechanical access for mechanical units on the roof. This is the south side elevation. The Beaton's Alley elevation. The rear elevation. And the north side elevation. And then here is the slide that compares the lot occupancies of other residential lots in the immediate area. And so you can see that they range from all the way up to looks like 63% down to 23%. But most of the lot occupancies are over 35%, and most are well over 35%. You can see down here, the average lot occupancy is 46%. So 42%, in my opinion, seems very reasonable and in keeping with the character of the homes in that area. And here are other homes in that area, photographs of those. So this is the 2 Beaton's Alley. This is a Trad Street. So the opposite, the south end of Beaton's Alley. Here is 5 Beaton's Alley. So we're moving up the alley. 7 Beaton's Alley. 8 Beaton's Alley. 9. 11. This is the lot in question, 15 Beaton's Alley. And then looking northwest, and these are the homes that front on Elliott Street, adjacent to 15 Beaton's Alley. Another view. And another view. This is 19 Beaton's Alley. 16. So we're moving 17 Beaton's Alley, or 17 Elliott Street, I'm sorry. So this is the house that's under construction here on this corner lot. And then Elliott Street homes here. So just back to the site plan showing that 42% lot occupancy. So that's the issue. I think they have certainly they have a case for a variance given the lot occupancies of surrounding properties. I think it would be unreasonable to restrict this one to 35%. And and I think that they meet the other requirements of the variance test as well. They did, Penny helped me out on this, but I know that you have more information about support.
Yes, sir. We received several letters of support from adjacent property owners, and basically it's a letter, and these property owners agreed to sign it. So I will read what it says, and then I'll just list the address and the name. This is a letter of support for proposed variance application at 15 Beaton's Alley. Dear members of the Board of Zoning Appeals and zoning staff, I met with Beth and David Simmons, the owners of the property at 15 Beaton's Alley, and discussed their proposed project. I support their request for a variance to increase the allowable lot coverage as drawn. This were the owners of 17 Elliott Street. Deborah and Tammy, I think is Trez is the last name. We received a letter of support from 27 Elliott Street. This is Sally, last name, and it's coming from Brian Daughtery. This is another letter of support from 27 Elliott. Have a letter of support from the owners at 23 Elliott, the Johnsons. Support from 19 Beaton's Alley, Brian Margetts. 7 Beaton's Alley, Rena Parducci. 10 Beaton's Alley, Victoria Hodges. 16 Beaton's Alley. It looks like Sandra. I'm not quite sure of this last name, so sorry about that. But this is the owner at 16 Beaton's Alley. The owner at 14 Beaton's Alley, Lorraine Evans. And those are our letters of support.
Thank you. So that concludes our presentation and recommendation on this. We recommend that the board approve this.
City recommends approval. Ms. Ashby, is there any opposition?
No, Mr. Robinson, no opposition.
Motion for approval made by Mr. Morrison, seconded by Mr. Judon. All in favor signify by saying aye. Mr. Morrison,
Aye.
Mr. Judon,
Aye.
Ms. Richards,
Aye.
Mr. Robinson votes aye. The motion is unanimously approved. Second item on the agenda is number 2 Anson Street. Request the 5th one-year extension of a vested right that expires on December 31st, 2022, pursuant to section 54-962. Vested right pertains to a special exception granted under section 54-220 on February 2nd, 2016 for a 50-unit accommodations use with conditions in a GB-A General Business Accommodation Zone District. Mr. Batchelder.
This application concerns the property on Anson Street, just north of North Market Street, where a hotel was approved. And the original approval has been extended. This will be the 5th and final extension that can be granted for this project. And under the vested rights law of the state that the city adopted in its zoning ordinance, vested rights are entitled to up to 5 one-year extensions. And so this, like I said, will be the final extension that can be requested. But this satisfies the requirements for an extension, in my opinion. So I recommend that this extension be approved.
Mr. Batchelder, and there have been no changes in the plans submitted to the city.
That's correct.
Very good. Does anyone here wish to comment on this application? Hearing none, a motion for approval is made by Mr. Judon, seconded by Ms. Richards. All in favor signify by saying aye. Mr. Morrison.
Aye.
Mr. Judon.
Aye.
Ms. Richards.
Aye.
Mr. Bennett.
Aye.
Mr. Robinson votes aye. The motion is unanimously approved. Next item on the agenda is 40-46 North Market. Request 5th one-year extension of a vested right that expires on December 31st, 2022, pursuant to section 54-962. Vested right pertains to a special exception granted under section 54-220 on February 2nd, 2016 for a 50-unit accommodations use with conditions and a variance granted from section 54-306 to allow a 3-story building in a GBA General Business Accommodation Zone District. Mr. Batchelder.
Like the other application, this is a vested right for a hotel on Market Street, right around the corner from Anson Street. And this will be the 5th and final extension that this vested right is eligible for, and we recommend approval.
City recommends approval, and Mr. Batchelder, no changes were submitted to the application on this.
That's correct.
Does anyone wish to be heard on this item? Motion for approval made by Ms. Richards, seconded by Mr. Bennett. All in favor signify by saying aye. Mr. Morrison,
Aye.
Mr. Jadon,
Aye.
Ms. Richards,
Aye.
Mr. Bennett,
Aye.
Mr. Robinson votes aye. The motion is unanimously approved. Next item is item 3, Cleveland Street. That has been deferred. Next item is item 4, 19 Peachtree Street, North Central. Request a special exception from section 54-110 to allow a one-story addition, hallway, living room, bedroom, bath, closet that extends a non-conforming 3-foot east side setback, 9 feet required. Request a variance from section 54-301 to allow a one-story addition with an 8.16 foot rear setback, 25 feet required, zoned SR2. Mr. Batchelder.
So this is a residential property in North Central. So it's between King and Rutledge on Peachtree, residentially zoned property. And I've circled the 2 other adjoining lots because those people, as you'll see at the end of this presentation, have indicated in writing that they support this request. Here's an aerial view. And what you'll notice is that this is a 1-story house. 19 Peachtree is a 1-story house. And looks like most of the other homes on that side of Peachtree in this block are also 1-story homes. And what's being requested is the variance or special exception and variance rather to allow a 1-story addition to the back of the existing house. So here's the existing house. I'm going to skip through that and just go straight to these photographs of the existing home. And here's a site plan. Again, this site plan illustrates the setback lines that are required by the zoning ordinance, 9 feet on the sides, 25 in the front, 25 in the rear. So the house, except for the being closer to one side of the property, which is typical for homes in that area of the city, they meet the front setback, meets the rear setback, but there's not much room in the backyard to build an addition to the 1-story home. And so you don't have a lot of options to expand the house and meet the requirements of the zoning ordinance. I think constructing a second floor over this house, like most houses, 1-story homes, would be a little bit challenging, but probably much more expensive. So what they're proposing is to construct a 1-story addition off the back to just enlarge the living space of the home. And here is a floor plan existing and proposed. So you see another bedroom and a small living area back there. Elevations, 1-story house, and that won't change. But the addition would extend the elevation on the sides and, of course, create a new rear. And here are the letters of support. So this is from the owner of 15 Peachtree next door on the side where the addition is proposed to extend the non-conforming side setback. And then this is from the neighbor to the rear of this of 19 Peachtree at 58 Cypress, indicating that they're supportive of the project. So our recommendation is for approval. We feel that they meet the special exception requirements to allow the extension of the existing 1-story home. while maintaining that non-conforming 3-foot east side setback. And the variance to allow that rear addition, we feel is warranted in light of the fact that this is a 1-story home and they really don't have other options to expand the small home without encroaching into that rear setback. And as you can see, the most affected neighbor is fine with this proposal. And I think as long as it's a 1-story addition, that is in keeping with the property and the neighborhood, and we recommend approval.
City recommends approval. Ms. Ashby, is there any opposition to this?
No, Mr. Robinson, no opposition.
Motion for approval made by Ms. Richards, seconded by Mr. Bennett. All in favor signify by saying aye. Mr. Morrison,
Aye.
Mr. Judon,
Aye.
Ms. Richards,
Aye.
Mr. Bennett,
Aye.
Mr. Robinson votes aye. The motion is unanimously approved. Next item on the agenda is 486 King Street, Ragsboro. Requests a special exception under section 54-506 to allow existing late night use bar or restaurant within 500 feet of a residential zone district to expand by adding outdoor patron use area, 1,220 square foot deck. Request special exception under 54-511 to allow existing bar restaurant to add 1,220 square feet of outdoor patron use area deck without providing 10 parking spaces. Expanded restaurant requires 28 spaces. Zone GB. Mr. Batchelder.
This is a request that's similar to the one that we had in January. That one was for expansion of a late night use and parking as well. And that concerned the establishment at 478 King Street, which is the Silver Dollar. This establishment, El Jefe, at 468 King Street, like the Silver Dollar, had been operating for a number of years, and with approvals that were granted some time ago for both these locations. And both were permitted late night uses, but they did not have any outdoor patron area. Although both properties had outdoor space behind the existing building with area for garbage and recycling and some parking spaces. So, but both of these locations, both of these late night uses, unlike I think just about all the other late night uses on King Street in this area, did not have any outdoor patron area. And of course, during COVID, that became very important, and the city adopted emergency provisions that allowed restaurants and bars that had the opportunity to expand outside to do so without the need to come through the board or even seek building permits or that sort of thing, unless they were actually constructing a building. And so a number of restaurants and bars did take advantage of that where they had the opportunity, and these two establishments had that opportunity and they took advantage of that, and they opened up spaces behind the building to allow their patrons to be outside and they could remain in business. So that was crucial at the time, and they would like to keep this outdoor space. And so let me just explain what that request is. So here's the zoning map showing commercial zonings. In this case, this property is actually mixed use to workforce housing, which is basically the same as a GB zoning district, the red area for commercial uses. The aerial view shows the existing one-story building on the property that extends all the way back here. And then you see some tent-like things back here. Well, that's where the outdoor space is. that they're requesting. And then beyond that, there is this, this flat roof that is over an area that is existing parking and some space for dumpsters and things like that, garbage recycling, that sort of thing. And then that area in the back, those parking spaces are accessed off the alley that runs between Mary Street and Ann Street. And here's the application. These are the plans. So again, this is El Jefe, late night use on King Street. This, I have a close-up image on the next one, but here we go. So that gray area back here is what we're talking about. This is the 1,220 square feet of additional courtyard outdoor space. And then you've got the indoor patron area here with that cross hatching on the site on the floor plan. These are drawings that were submitted to show compliance with the late night use special exception. And as you can see, the property is within 500 feet of a residentially zoned property. That's this brown property right down here and up here. And that means that any alcohol serving use that wants to operate past midnight has to come before you for approval, and any expansion of an existing late night use that is within 500 feet also has to do that as well. So, and here is the detailed information. So this image, this is a fence that runs right along this side right here. So you see there's, and you see the building that the music farm occupies right back here, and the parking spaces on the adjoining property right here. But under this roof are additional parking spaces. And then more photographs. You see the outdoor patron area and images of the alley, the dumpsters, and again, the area that they're asking for is highlighted here, right up here. And then this is not outdoor patron area. This is parking. Another view, more information, and other information about other late night uses. And this is in an area of high concentration, no question about that. This is the Silver Dollar property up here that was just approved for some outdoor patron area back here. Another piece of information about parking. And parking is one of the issues here because they are adding more patron area, which means they're increasing the requirement in the zoning ordinance for parking, and without providing more spaces. But they're not really displacing any of the existing parking because that area that they are proposing to keep as outdoor patron area was not really being used for actual parking spaces before. And this is a letter of opposition from the Musique Ragboro Neighborhood Association. So that neighborhood association, which covers the Musique Ragboro neighborhood, that includes not only the residential area that's east of Meeting Street and north of Calhoun, but that neighborhood extends, the boundaries of that neighborhood rather extend actually over to King Street. So this property, being on the east side of King Street, is technically within the boundaries of that neighborhood, although I think it's safe to say that that area of King Street is closer to residences in Radcliffe Borough than than Mazik Ragborough. And Radcliffe Borough has not expressed any opposition to this request. I think they're just not taking a position on these requests on this side of King Street, my understanding. So that concludes the slides that were presented by or submitted by the applicant. Like I said, there are about 6 spaces in the back. They're not actually eligible to be used by El Jefe operators or customers. They're leased to a different use up there, but they're still on the property. So that technically means that that property has some existing parking, although it's not used by this particular use and can't be displaced. But the outdoor space that they do want to add as patron area will expand their parking requirement by 10 spaces. So that is the nature of the special exception request. And then there's the expansion of the outdoor, the late night use for this outdoor space. Like with the Silver Dollar, we recommended approval of this request. The proposal is to add outdoor patron area, but not increase the occupancy limit for the business. I'm not sure if they could do that under the building codes that are in place today. But even if they could, they don't want to do that. They've got a high enough occupancy limit right now that they're comfortable keeping it at whatever that limit is. And the other condition that we did ask to be placed on the approval for the other location, Silver Dollar, is that there would be a condition that would not allow any live music or amplified sound on the patio. And this applicant is fine with having that condition attached to this approval. I think that will be important in the future as these locations turn over and other businesses come in. We want to make sure that these other businesses continue to do things that are neighborhood friendly. So with those 2 conditions, we recommend approval of this request and feel that this would be appropriate, given that the expansion is to add outdoor space that doesn't presently exist for this business. If it was an addition of indoor space, then I would not be supportive of that. But with a outside space being added, they will be really more comparable in what they offer to the other late night uses up there. And the people that smoke, of course, that's or that want to smoke, that's gives them an opportunity to go do that instead of going on King Street and standing on the sidewalk, which is not good with the congestion that we have up there. So, and I should also point out that back last fall, when the expiration of those emergency measures that allowed these outdoor spaces was approaching, the staff, city staff, did have meetings with different business owners, including this business owner, about the process to go through what would be required in order for them to keep the outdoor space that they already had under the emergency measures. And the police department was informed of that. I can't remember if anybody participated in that meeting, but they were informed of it and they haven't expressed any concerns or opposition to me. In fact, I think one time I did have a conversation with one of the folks in the police department about, adding a little bit of outdoor space in the back so that they had a place for patrons to go instead of standing on the sidewalk if they wanted to go out and have a cigarette. And I've heard that without an outdoor space in the back, that the congestion on King Street can become a problem with people standing there and other people walking by and trying to get in and out and all that sort of thing. So, so for all those reasons, we think that this is an appropriate request to approve, and we recommend approval with those two conditions.
City recommends approval with two conditions: no amplified or live music outside, and no increase in the occupancy limit for the property. Ms. Ashby, is there anyone present in opposition?
No, Mr. Robinson, and one present in opposition.
Any questions or comments from the board? Any motion?
I do have one question. I'm just wondering, you know, with the letter that was sent by the neighborhood association, does anyone feel that they are justified in their request? I mean, I understand, I agree with Lee. I think it's, you know, it's having this outdoor space was something sort of a silver lining of COVID. However, you know, when all those outdoor spaces during the pandemic were in operation, that we didn't have a lot of tourist traffic, you know, there weren't as many people in Charleston. And so the impacts, I think, on the neighborhoods weren't felt as much as perhaps they're going to be now. I just wonder if anybody else has any thoughts along those lines.
And I think, Ms. Richards, one thing I'm thinking about is this is on the other side of King Street from Mezquite, Ragsboro. I think we're all very sensitive to the neighborhood concerns and certainly want to listen to those and give them great consideration. I think in this particular case, you know, the outdoor space would be buffered by this building itself, in addition to all the other buildings on the west side of King Street.
Yeah, it's really more the parking issue, I think.
Well, I mean, I would be concerned too, Robin, if there were any increase being allowed in the occupancy.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that does sort of, like Lee said, it's sort of, I just thought I'd throw it out there for discussion.
No, I mean, I think it's a very good question, but.
And I think we're going to have more of these that are coming along. And,
yeah.
And I mean, I do think it's great to have the outdoor space. I agree. And I think, like Lee said, as long as we're not increasing the occupancy, then it shouldn't affect the parking anyway, right? Because
In
that's
theory, yeah.
just in theory, right?
I agree with all those comments. I would even add too that it sounded like from the application that the parking spaces are not even available for employees currently, and
Right.
so you know, I don't know that there's a that's going to change the use of that space or the burden of parking in the surrounding area. I think would
Right.
the same.
Lee, were you explaining that this building actually has parking, but it leases out its own parking? Is that what you were suggesting early?
Well, the owner of the property, I think, has a few parking spaces. I think there might be 6 of them under this roof back here. I think they've leased those to another property that they own in the immediate area. It might be this one. And so this establishment has never had access to these parking spaces back here.
I got you. Lease them to themselves. Okay.
Any other comments or questions from the board?
Yeah, I have a comment. My basic understanding is that without an increase in the occupancy, all they're doing is just opening up an area in which their patrons can go outside. That's my understanding.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay.
Are there
I'll
any
move.
motions?
I'll move for approval with the two conditions.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Mr. Morrison,
Aye.
Mr. Judon,
Aye.
Ms. Richards,
Aye.
Mr. Bennett,
Aye.
Mr. Robinson votes aye. The motion is unanimously approved. Good comments. Next item on the agenda is number 7, 2414 Sylvan Shores Drive, Sylvan Shores. Request a variance from section 54-301 to allow an 8-foot fence to the rear and side property lines. 6 feet height limitation required, zone SR1. Mr. Batchelder.
This is a residential property, Sylvan Shores, West Ashley. And see it here, kind of mid-block aerial view of the property. Zoning map, and what this also illustrates is that the property is to the rear on Two Oaks Drive, are not within the city limits of Charleston. And those properties are under the jurisdiction of Charleston County for zoning. And the county does not have a limit on fence height. So the city has a 6-foot limit. County properties don't have any limit. And I just wanted to point that out. Now, in this case, the applicant has submitted their application, their explanation of why they feel they need the variance test. Here's the house in question. These are the folks asking for the fence height variance. And it would come off the front corner of the house over here, and then run back all the way to the back property line, go along the back, and then come back out, as you'll see on the site plan. So anyway, they've pointed out there's another 8-foot fence in the neighborhood already. I'm not familiar with that property to speak on that, but that's what they've indicated in their application. And the issue for them, as they explain in their application, is the neighbor next door who has a bright light that shines against their house. And then there's also apparently some trespassing issues. And so they have this light shining against their house throughout the night. And this is a view from inside their house, looking at that light. And then this just illustrates the path of that light towards that window. And again, here's the side property line and the side yard that they kind of share right now with that neighbor. But the fence, as proposed, would come off, run down the property line right here, all the way up to the front corner of the house, and then turn back into the house. So on the site plan, shown this way, so you see where it comes out that front corner and then all the way back along the side, to the rear, back, and then along here. So that is the request that they have. They've contacted their ARB or ACRC, and they've indicated that they have approved the project, the 8-foot fence. And Penny, I believe you have more information about other neighbors as well.
Well, in their addressing of the variance test, Mr. Batchelder, they mentioned that their neighbor on the other side does not object to an 8-foot fence, and the neighbor to the rear on the back side does not object to an 8-foot fence.
Okay. So that is the situation. And our recommendation is for approval.
City recommends approval. Ms. Ashby, is there any opposition?
No, Mr. Robinson, no opposition.
Mr. Morrison moves for approval, seconded by Mr. Jadon. All in favor signify by saying aye. Mr. Morrison,
Aye.
Mr. Jadon,
Aye.
Ms. Richards,
Aye.
Mr. Bennett.
Aye.
Mr. Robinson votes aye. Motion is unanimously approved. That is the end of the agenda. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All
Everybody
right.
have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.
Good night.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Thanks. Y'all too. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.